Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to lesson 3. And today, students will be able to explain how the setting of All Summer in a Day affected the characters. Remember, what was the setting of All Summer in a Day? It's in Venus, right? And what happens in Venus? It only rains one time, right? I'm sorry, not it doesn't. The sun only comes out once every how often? Every 7 years, right? And every day that it's raining, does it rain a little bit or a lot? It rains cats and dogs, right? A lot. So we're going to see how the setting affected the characters. Let's look at our key points. Remember, our key points are going to guide us. So we're going to talk all about setting. So what are we going to do? We're going to identify the sensory language, because remember, the author describes very vividly the setting. And then we're going to describe the setting of All Summer in a Day. We're going to label the setting. So the sun, the moon, the house, what does it look like? And then we're going to label sensory language. Why is this important, boys and girls? Well, it's important to know how the setting impacts the character. Remember, how does it change the character? Did Margot stay the same throughout the whole story? No, right? She was feeling some way at the beginning. Remember, what was the word for beginning? Exposition. So good job if you said exposition. How was she feeling in the middle? What's another word for middle? The climax. And then how was she feeling towards the end? What's another synonym for end? Resolution. Yes. So we're going to analyze that. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to our selection. Remember, we're good readers. We're going to go back and reread it. So now we get to read it a little bit more faster, right? Because we're just trying to get to the details. So All Summer in a Day by Ray Bradbury. Ready? Ready? Now? Soon? Do the scientists really know? Will it happen today? Will it? Look, look, see for yourself. The children press to each other like so many roses, so many weeds intermixed, peering out for a look at the hidden sun. It rained. It had been raining for 7 years, thousands upon thousands of days, and compounded in fills from one end to the other with rain, with the drum and gush of water, with the sweet crystal fall of showers, and the concussion of storms so heavy they were tidal waves come over the islands. 1,000 forests had been crushed under the rain and had grown up 1,000 times to be crushed again. And this was the way of life was forever on the planet Venus. And this was the schoolroom of the children of the rocket man and woman who had come to a raining world to set up civilization and live out their lives. It's stopping! It's stopping! Yes! Yes! Margaret stood apart from them, from these children who would ever remember a time when there wasn't rain and rain and rain. They were all 9 years old, and if there had been a day 7 years ago when the sun came out for an hour and showed its face to the stunned world, they could not recall. Sometimes at night she heard them stir in remembrance, and she knew they were dreaming and remembering gold or a yellow crayon or a coin large enough to buy the world with. She knew they thought they remembered a warmness, like a blushing in the face, in the body, in the arms and legs, and trembling hands. But then they always awoke to the tatting drum, the endless shaking down of clear bed necklaces upon the roof, the walk, like the gardens, the forest, and the dreams were gone. All day yesterday they had read in class about the sun, about how like a lemon it was and how hot, and they had written small stories or essays or poems about it. I think the sun is a flower that blooms for just 1 hour. That was Margaret's poem, read in a quiet voice in the still classroom while the rain was falling outside. "Ah, you didn't write that," protested one of the boys. "I did," said Margot. "I did." "William," said the teacher. But that was yesterday. Now the rain was slackening, and the children were crushed in the great thick windows. "Where's the teacher?" "She'll be back." "She'd better hurry. We'll miss it." They turned on themselves like a feverish wheel, and tumbling spokes. Margaret stood alone. She was a very frail girl who looked as if she had been lost in the rain for years, and the rain was washed out of the blue from her eyes and the red of her mouth and the yellow from her hair, and she was an old photograph dusted from an album, whitened away, and if she spoke at all her voice would be a ghost. Now she stood, separate, staring at the rain and the loud wet world beyond the huge glass. "What are you looking at?" said William. Margaret said nothing. "Speak when you're spoken to." He gave her a shove, but she did not move. Rather, she let herself be moved only by him and nothing else. They edged away from her. They would not look at her. She felt them go away, and this was because she would play no games with them in the echoing tunnels and the underground city. If they tagged her and ran, she stood blinking after them, and she did not follow. When the class sang songs about happiness and lives and games, her lips barely moved. Only when they sang about the sun in the summer did her lips move again as she watched the drenched windows. And then, of course, the biggest crime of all was that she had come here only 5 years ago from Earth, and she remembered the sun and the way the sun was and the and sky was and how she was and she was four in Ohio. And they had been on Venus all of their lives, and they had only been 2 years old when the last sun came out, and had long since forgotten the color and heat of it and the way it really was. But Margot remembered. "It's like a penny," she said once. Yes, eyes closed. "No, it's not," the children cried. "It's like a fire," she said, "in the stove." "You're lying. You don't remember," cried the children. But she remembered and stood quietly apart from all of them and watched the pattering windows. And once, a month ago, she had refused to shower in the school shower rooms, had clutched her hands to her ears and over her head, screaming the water mustn't touch her head. So after that, dimly, she sensed it. She was different, and they knew her difference and kept away. There was talk about her father and mother, and they were taking her back to Earth next year. It seemed vital to her. It seemed vital that they do so, though it would mean the loss of thousands of dollars to her family. And so the children hated her for all these reasons, so big and little consequences. They hated her pale snow face, her waiting silence, her thinness, and her possible future. "Get away!" The boy gave her another push. "What are you waiting for?" Then for the first time she turned and looked at him. And what was she waiting for was in her eyes. "Well, don't wait around here," cried the boy savagely. "You won't see nothing." Her lips moved. "Nothing!" he cried. "It was all a joke, wasn't it?" He turned to the other children. "Nothing's happening today, is it?" They all blinked at him and then, understanding, laughing, and shook their heads. "Nothing! Nothing!" "Oh, but," Margot whispered, her eyes helpless, "this is the day the scientists predict. They say they know the sun." "All a joke," said the boy, and seized her roughly. "Hey, everyone, let's put her in a closet before the teacher comes." "No," said Margaret, falling back. They searched about her, cut her up in her board, protesting and then pleading and then crying back into a tunnel, a room in a closet, where they slammed and locked the door. And they stood looking at the door and saw it tremble from her beating and throwing herself against it. They heard her muffled cries. Then, smiling, they turned and went out and back down to the tunnel, just as the teacher arrived. "Ready, children?" She glanced at her watch. "Yes," said everyone. Are we all here?" "Yes." The rain slackened still more. They crowded to the huge door. The rain stopped. It was as if, in the midst of a film concerning an avalanche, a tornado, a hurricane, a volcanic eruption, something had first gone wrong with the sound apparatus, gone wrong with the sound. Thus muffling and finally cutting off all the noise. All of the blasts and repercussions and thunders, and then second, ripened from the film of the projector and inserted its place into the beautiful tropical slide, which did not move or tremble. The world ground stood to a standstill. The silence was so immense and unbelievable that you felt your ears had been stuffed or had lost your hearing altogether. The children put their hands to their ears. They stood apart. The door slid back and the smell of the silent, waiting world came into them. The sun came out. It was the color of flaming bronze, and it was very large, and the sky around it was a blazing blue tile color. And the jungle burned with sunlight as the children, released from their spell, rushed out, yelling into the springtime. "Now don't go too far," called the children after them. "You've only got 2 hours, you know. You wouldn't want to get caught out." But they were running and turning their faces to the sky and feeling the sun on their cheeks like a warm iron. They were taking off their jackets and letting the sun burn their arms. Oh, it's better than the sun lamps, isn't it? Much, much better. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause right here. And I want you to go back to your story map. Okay, and I want to concentrate on this one for today. Let me just zoom in a little more. We're going to work on the one that says Wednesday, simile or metaphor that produces imagery. Copy the sentence. I think the sun, oops, I forgot my quotations because I'm copying from the text. The sun is like a flower. Remember, this is a poem that Margot wrote. In class, you're going to tell me, is it a simile or is it a metaphor? If you already know the answer, you can circle simile or you can circle metaphor. I think the sun is like a flower. I'm going to give you 15 more seconds to copy that. Okay. I want you to go to the section that says Tuesday. So we're in the same story, page number 9, and we're going to go where it says character. Who's my main character, boys and girls? Who do we hear a lot from? Margot, right? So let's go ahead and write here Margot. So she's my character. I'm going to write a little character sign for her. Who does she interact with? Can we say she interacts with her parents? That means that we know what's happening with our parents? We don't, right? We don't hear from them at all. Remember, what's the setting? The setting is in Venus, right? But to be more specific, so I'm going to put here, setting is in Venus. But where are they? Remember, they're talking to the teacher. So what's the setting? The actual setting. It's in a classroom, right? So I'm going to put here in the classroom. So who is she interacting with? Who does she talk to? She talks to the kids or the children, right? So she interacts with the children. We could also say with William, right? William and the children. How does she interact with them? How? In the school that they attend, right? So I'm going to put here in school. Because remember, they're in school. What's the relationship with the children, boys and girls? What's her relationship with the children? Do they get along? No, right? What can we say here? What's her relationship with them? Almost non-existent, right? They don't like her. So let's write that. Almost none. It's almost none, right? They talk to her, but do they have a friendship? They don't, right? They don't like her. Why don't they like her? She remembers the sun, right? And they don't. Remember, where did she move from? She moved from Ohio, so she remembers the sun. But remember, they were born there in Venus. They don't remember the sun, so they don't like her. Now, how does she change, boys and girls, at the beginning? How is she feeling? Remember when they say, let's go back to our text. And the author describes her with such intensity. Look what he says. She was a very frail girl who looked as if she had been lost in the rain for years, and the rain had washed out the blue from her eyes, and the red from her mouth, and the yellow from her hair. She was an old photograph dusted from an album, wiping away, and if she spoke at all, her voice would be a ghost. Now she stood separate, staring at the rain and the loud wet world beyond the huge glass. So boys and girls, how would we describe her? Is she joyful? No, right? She's pale. She has no color. She looks very what? Sad or depressed, right? Yes, let's go ahead and write that. So she's very sad. We can say blue. Can we say depressed? Yes, right. She's very depressed that there's no sun. She came from Earth where there was the sun, there was sunshine, there was flowers, there was all these things, and then she went to Venus to where it rains every day. Of course she's going to be sad and depressed, right? Especially if it rains so much you can't even go outside. Okay. At the end, boys and girls, was she able to see the sun? No, right? How does she feel? How do you think she's feeling? we're going to answer this question in the live session. I want you to put a box on it. Think about it. How is she feeling? And then here in the middle, I want you to put Margot. What are some character traits? So I'm going to get you started with this, and then we're going to finish in the live session. For example, she's very quiet. Remember, the author described her as being an old, dusty photograph. She's quiet. And then he also described her voice. If she spoke, it was almost like a ghost. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause here. We're going to finish reading the selection in class, so be ready to read. And we're going to go ahead and finish these sections that we started. So you're going to tell me if it's a simile or metaphor, and how do you know that? And then you're going to tell me, how did she change, and what are some other character traits? So if you already have some answers, definitely go ahead and write them. And I will see you in the live session.